I'm Danielle, your host of the Abridged to Motherhood podcast, the place where moms like you learn to thrive, not just survive through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. I'm a birth and postpartum doula and a mom of two who's been where you are. My first pregnancy was filled with so much excitement, but it was also marked by stress, anxiety, and fear of the unknown. I thought I had everything mapped out, but when postpartum hit, I realized how unprepared I was for the physical, emotional, and mental toll of motherhood. It was overwhelming, lonely, and nothing like I imagined. When I found out I was pregnant again, I knew I needed to approach things differently. I made it my mission to not only prepare for postpartum, but to prioritize myself in the process. That shift changed everything. Now I'm here to help you do the same. Whether you're navigating your first pregnancy, feeling buried under endless advice, or struggling to figure out what you actually need for postpartum, this podcast is your safe space. You'll find practical tips, honest conversations, and expert insights to help you feel informed, supported, and empowered through every stage of motherhood. If you're ready to feel confident, prepared, and truly supported in your motherhood journey, stick around. This is for you. Hey friends, welcome back to the Abridged to Motherhood podcast. Today I have Margo Lowy. She is a doctor in psychotherapy specializing in mothering. She's the author of Maternal Ambivalence, The Loving Moments and Bitter Truths of Motherhood, published by Post Hill Press, and holds a doctorate from the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia, where she researched maternal ambivalence. Dr. Lowy is the author of a previous academic book, The Maternal Experience: Encounters with Ambivalence and Love, and has spoken about maternal ambivalence at universities and in media interviews worldwide. She is a columnist for Psychology Today, a member of PEN America, and a former advisor to the founder of the Australian Jewish Fertility Network. She is a mother to 3 children and is based with her husband in New York City. So thank you, Dr. Lowy, for coming on the podcast. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Me too. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Danielle.
Yeah. So talk to us about what maternal ambivalence is and why it's such an important conversation for new moms.
That's a great place to start. Maternal ambivalence is our ability as mums to bring all our feelings together, the feelings of love and bitterness, the feelings of compassion and not compassion, the feelings of selflessness and selfishness. And really what it's about is being able to give a place and meaning to all our feelings. As mums, we try and neglect the uncomfortable ones and probably not give them enough thought. And my work is about learning from these difficult, dark feelings, because mothering was designed to have all these different feelings and to try and understand all of them. And traditionally, as mums, we have kind of been programmed not to think and not to delve into the dark, difficult ones. We're actually meant to be 24/7 on with our children, especially young mums, and we're kind of meant to be able to manage it all. And there's not really any place to think about in a processed way those difficult feelings. And in fact, those difficult and dark feelings can transform us. And that's really what maternal ambivalence is. They transform us, and we know when it happens. I refer to them as melting moments. When we're in a rhythm with our child and something happens between us and we melt, and our love, like even something that has just happened that's difficult, a love overwhelms us. And as mums, we've all experienced these feelings, and they're the feelings that keep us showing up every day. So this is really an outline of what my work is about. It's really about including ambivalence in our maternal language, because ambivalence is misunderstood. It's seen as something negative, something people don't really understand it. They confuse it with indifference, which is a cutting off. Ambivalence is a connection. Really, it's connecting with ourselves and connecting with our children. I want maternal ambivalence to be part of what we talk about and what we own and what we claim in our mothering.
I needed you in my first postpartum journey. I was such a black and white thinker at that time, and I felt that if I wasn't joyful and happy all the time, then I was failing. And as I've gone along in my motherhood journey, I've learned to live in the gray. And I love the gray because two things can be true at the same time. Like you're stating, you can have joy, but also have deep sadness and grief at the same time in our motherhood journeys. And I love what you shared about how it's connection and that bond that it forms with our children as well. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Before I go to that, I'd just like to say that you explained it really well, because ambivalence counters the splitting. You know, when I talk about ambivalence, it's always the and, not the or, which is a really good way for mums to think about it. It's and, not or. When you're talking about your mothering experience, which is much more recent than mine, I think about my own. And with my first two boys, I was very rigid, and I wasn't able to even tolerate that it wasn't the most wonderful experience of my life. I knew it wasn't. It wasn't always wonderful. Let me put it that way. I knew it wasn't, but I didn't have words to put to those moments that were difficult. So I pushed them away. And when I had my third child, she was a daughter. She wasn't going to let me get away with that. Like, she was like naming it and naming it. And it helped me so much to really review what my mothering is and was, and to make it flow. You really hit the nail on the head then. We all know that our children know when we're being truthful. They just know because they're little and they pick it up. So when we're not truthful, or we try to hide something from them, there's something, they pick up something and they know, and it's hard to keep the flow going. People often ask me, well, do you talk about your feelings to your children? And my response to that is, one needs to be age appropriate. But I think it's really important to be able to say to your child, I'm not having such a great day. It's difficult today. And that's what it is, and it's not your fault, but mummy's feeling like this. And just to have that connection. With ambivalence, you're connecting with all your feelings, the distressing ones and the loving ones, the bitter moments and the other moments. So your child sees a genuine mother, and there's connection. If we cut something off, we're not flowing and we're not connecting. And so that's really very much part of my work as well, to connect. And what we kind of are more inclined to do is, when things are difficult, sometimes it's easier to go into our little cocoon and cut off. And what I'm saying is, kind of gets into the area of where we don't want to go. But what we can do is we can give ourselves some breathing space, whether it's counting to 10, whether it's locking ourselves in the bathroom, or a few minutes just to breathe. And then we're able to reconnect with ourselves. And the other part of that is that it's really important for us as mothers, and it's really difficult to often remain adult, because sometimes we, the same way as they are yelling and screaming and carrying on, sometimes and often we want to do that. And sometimes we do, and that's all right. But if we can kind of be aware that we are actually the adults, and we don't have to be perfect. That's not what I'm talking about. But just be aware of ourselves and aware of our feelings and aware of where we are. And that will really help us to stay with that connection with ourselves and then with our child. It's always ourselves first.
I hear that from so many moms that I work with and that come to my support group, that so many of us struggle with rage and with anger, and there's so much shame surrounding that. And I think what you're talking about there is so true. And I know the research is out there about how repair is so important, that when those moments happen, that we do repair, and that's building that connection, but acknowledging that that is an emotion that we will feel
Yes,
as mothers.
that's right. If we don't feel it, my question is, are we mothering? Okay, different people have different stuff. Some people, because of their own experience, their own disposition, some people might be angry, Some people might be more inclined to cut off. There's all different ways. You talked about would have been nice to know a lot of these things pre-partum. And one of the reasons I wrote my book is that I really feel that I would have loved to have had a different version of what mothering is, because I kind of came into it the first time, was nearly 45 years ago, with the feeling that I was going to have this wonderful bond with my child, which I did have, but it was always going to be wonderful. And that's just not how it is. And in all my work, I found a few really good sayings for myself. And one of them is that mothering is messy and interrupted and loving experience. That really covers a lot. And it's messy. And it's definitely interrupted. I can't imagine how many times today you have been interrupted. If you really know that, then you kind of know what you're getting into. And of course, it's loving. And sometimes it's not so loving. Sometimes it's bitter. And that's okay. And the other part of it, which is what you alluded to, is mothering is really an experience of making mistakes and repairing, and making them and repairing them, and making them and repairing them. And that's the only way that we can learn. We can't learn unless we're in there making mistakes and repairing them. And we do something, maybe we muck up the same thing 10 times. On the 11th time, if we can do it okay, we need to pat ourselves on the back, really, because we're not good at that either. And then we mightn't fix it up again for another 7 or 8 times. But it doesn't matter, because if we did it once, it's fantastic. And that's the other part. We really need to be not so hard on ourselves. We are so hard, yet way too hard. We need to be forgiving to ourselves, and that also helps us to be forgiving towards our child. So it's all connected. And we talked about this connection, and really, when we think about it, our relationship with our baby is our baby's first relationship. It's the first couple in our baby's life. So it is so important. And maybe that's why we think we can do it perfectly, or we put so much pressure on ourselves. And I'm trying to disrupt that narrative and to say, when you have your first child, this is your first example of the first time experience of being a mother. So you're learning and the baby's learning and you're doing it together. Something about that connection and that coupling, which is so wonderful. And we're not going to be perfect. And what is astounding is that we, and I include myself here, we all try and do it perfectly, even though we know we can't, and we really know that we can learn by our mistakes, but we just try and do it perfectly. So I also want to disrupt that. It makes ourselves rigid, and our kids pick up on that rigidity.
That's my life's work as well as a postpartum doula. And with what I do here on this podcast, it's to disrupt that narrative, because so many of us walk into motherhood with these rosy colored glasses. And whether that's from social media, whether that's from lived experience, I know I had my mom at a pedestal for sure. And I still do to a degree, but she made mothering look easy. So I assumed it would also be easy for me. And it was a little bit of a more difficult experience. I suffered from postpartum depression and anxiety with my first, and type A perfectionist types, overachievers, hello over here, we tend to be more at risk of that. And your work with this maternal ambivalence, I think, opens our minds to that idea that perfection does not exist and that there is this darkness and this lightness that comes into motherhood. I'm really curious, have you dove into any of that research about how that contributes or does not contribute to perinatal mental health?
Okay, well, I haven't done a lot of work on postpartum. In Australia, we call it postnatal, so it's postpartum depression. But there is a wonderful book, and I don't know whether you've come across it. Stephanie Sprenger and Jessica Smock. It's called Mothering Through the Darkness. Women Open Up About the Postpartum Experience. And it's a lot of stories about postpartum depression, and it is the most wonderful book, because the mothers in their experience are so honest about their feelings. And they talk about hate. And I'm really interested in hate because that is so taboo. And I do believe that mothers have moments of hating and that it's okay. They don't act on it. I'm not talking about, but I'm just saying they experience it. And we also have a lot to thank society because that is so taboo. But anyway, back to this book, a few mothers actually admit to it. And I'm not sure whether that they're in such a low space that they admit to it and that helps them, because the mothers in this book are able to come out. These are the mothers, their stories, or that whether they were able to admit to these feelings because they were at the point they had to be so truthful. So I'm really fascinated with this area, and I think that we need to talk about it a lot more, and we need to talk about the chemical part of it because that's what it is. And also, hopefully, my book will help mothers that are. I don't know if you're in the deep throes of it, if you could actually pick up a book and read it. If one could, I think my book would definitely help because my book is an encouragement. It's like we're all in this together. And someone described it as a companion, almost like a soothing companion. I'm really very careful in my work not to be judgmental. And I think that if we think about social media, if we think about how mothering is postured in society as far as the ideals go, there is a lot of judgment about mothering. And people think they can kind of, it's pretty free range to be able to say things about mothering without really understanding the experiences. And every mother has their own unique experience with each of their children. And there's millions, every day there's more. So it's really important to disrupt this judgment as well. And I also talk about in my work flow. It's so important to be able to flow if we can, to be able to laugh and to use humor. Sometimes it's really hard, but also sometimes because we want everything to go smoothly as mothers, we kind of make things into disasters that maybe they don't really need to be. And I can only say this now because I'm looking back on my own experience and how I think that I was so rigid. Like if I didn't get the kids to school on time, it was like a disaster. And now I look back on it, I think that was just, no, it's not that important. I'm not saying get them to school late every day, but if you make a mistake, it's not that important. So it's just, to flow with it a little bit more. And rigidity, is best friends with judgment.
And that's what I try to create my in-person support group and my online group as well, is this judgment-free space for moms to be able to come and share. Because, like you said, there's so much noise out there. There's so much societal expectation. There's expectation from your mom or your mother-in-law or your sister or your best friend. And like you said, everybody's experience is so different. And I want to come back to when you were sharing about that idea of hate,
Yes.
that love and hate or frustration can exist side by side. And that is a scary thing
Yes.
to
Yeah.
admit. And I know most women would never want to say that they had a feeling of hate toward their child, or I think resentment can go right along with that too.
I think hate is such a strong word and it
Hmm.
kind of is so powerful. Kind of you can
Right.
get a bit of resentment. The interesting thing about love and hate, and I have done work on this, in fact, the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. It's cutting off. If we have a hating moment, we're still connected. We're still able to feel and to think and to respond. If we cut off, there's a deadness there. And that to me is the most difficult and the most despairing, difficult feeling, that cutting off, because then you're not experiencing anything. So I think that it would be much healthier if people could actually admit to it. Some mums do. once spoke to a colleague many, many years ago about the word hate myself. I've written about this myself in one of my books. And I was brought up that hate was bad. Like you cannot go there. It's just like, no. I don't know if I was ever told that, but that's what I internalized. And we had this conversation, and he said to me, well, what's wrong with hate? Like, what's wrong with it? And I actually couldn't answer that, because when one talks about hate, the way we're talking about it, we're not talking about doing something active. We're not talking about murder. We're not talking about hurting. We're talking about a feeling. And so that is why, if it was part of the narrative or the dialogue, there'd be a lot of mothers that would feel much better about themselves because they actually do have these moments. And they're only scary because of what we wrap it in. That's how I see it. When I wrote my first book, I took the definition of ambivalence from a psychoanalyst called Rosika Parker. And she talked about maternal ambivalence as the conflicting feelings of love and hate. And I talked about that for quite a while. That was in my first book, and I got very interesting responses from people. I reworked it this time because I think when some people saw that, it was too scary to go there, and it turned them off, and they weren't able to tolerate the word. But maybe one day we will be able to tolerate it, and we will be able to use it with the power that it has, and to understand that it's not a doing, it's a feeling, and it doesn't hurt anyone. It's almost like it's better to have those moments than the cutting off moments.
That's really interesting. I'm a Christian, and right, hate is not, that's sinful. We're not going to go there. And in my experience, right, I am going to have those feelings because I'm a human being, but I can take that in my faith practice and bring that to God and lay it at his feet, but I'm admitting it so that then I can turn from it, like you're saying. So there's power in that, talking about our emotions and not repressing them, because I know and you know from our experiences, when we repress them, that just turns into a bigger issue in our minds and our mothering, all of it.
In all our relationships. And what you've actually introduced is something else I talk about, how important it is to name our feelings. Because when we don't name them, they can't actually exist. They exist, but we haven't got a sense of them. When we name them, we get a sense of them. And the other thing you talked about is you're actually talking about also their ambivalence, because if you're not allowed to say a word, or you're not allowed to have the feeling, then it's a dark, distressing feeling and you're pushing it away. And I'm actually saying, let's do the opposite. Let's disrupt this. Let's bring them together. And let's realize that naming them is not gonna hurt anyone. And I'm not saying, obviously, go and say to your kid, I hate you. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the feelings, they belong to us. And let's work with them. Let's try and understand them. Let's really try and understand our mothering. And so my way of understanding it a bit more is with this notion of maternal ambivalence and how it can be transformative.
I just feel like so many moms need to hear this and just understand that these feelings can coexist. And like you said, name the emotions, take the shame and the guilt out of it. And you just really have my mind spinning with postpartum anxiety on the rise, especially since the pandemic. I think there just has been so much isolation. There's still so much shame surrounding it, especially in those early years of motherhood. You're not supposed to have these feelings. You're not supposed to be worried all the time. You're not supposed to be sad. You're not supposed to be anxious. You're not supposed to be all of these things. But if we normalized it a little bit more and allowed people to be open about it and be vulnerable, maybe we wouldn't be seeing as much of the problem that we have now.
No, and you're right. And the other thing, normalizing them. But the issue here, I think, is we need to really surround ourselves with people that aren't judgmental and that have our backs. And I believe that we all have antennas, and we know who to surround ourselves with. And I'm kind of pleading with mums to surround themselves with people that support them. Maybe not all the time, not all, but actually have their back and that give them energy as well. Because you need to be with people that support you, especially as a new mum, because it's so lonely. It can be so isolating. And you talk about the pandemic. I mean, that would have to be the epitome of that. I had my first child 45 years ago, and in those days there was no internet. There wasn't even mobile phones. So what we used to do once a week, there was a small group of us. There was my sister, family, friends. There was about 6 of us, and we would sit around and talk at someone's kitchen. And someone's kitchen we changed it every week, and just talk about our mothering and what we made for dinner, or whether our child was walk, blah blah blah, all those things we talk about. But it was such a organic. We felt so supported, and I think today it's so hard to get that, because what do mums do now? Pick up these things and look at Instagram. Instagram, no, it's not true. And mothers are either fully coiffed at 8 o'clock at school, like full makeup, with all the children nicely behaved, looking like they got up at 7 and they're at school at 8, so that something's going on there, or they're like ragged, and which most mums are. But what they do, what social media like to do, that's what their business is to divide it. And what I say is mothering is both. Sometimes we're coiffed and sometimes we're ragged. And that's what it is. It's not one or the other. It's both. And we need to learn to love both of those parts of ourselves. And the raggedy, messy part is just as loving as the other part. But interesting, when we're talking about the people that we surround ourselves with, and that people around us can be judgmental, we are the most judgmental of ourselves, right? We collude with this. We collude with the social media. We collude with trying to be perfect. So this is where we need to start with ourselves and lower our bar.
I want every mom who's listening to hear what you just said again, because we have to lower that bar. We are our harshest critics, and it just ends up leading to more turmoil. Talk to that mom right now that's listening, that's feeling that way. What is that one nugget of wisdom you want to leave her with?
I think I'll go back to what I was saying, that mothering is messy and interrupted and loving. Has all those flavors in it. And we need to try and understand the difficult, dark, disturbing parts and not push them away. And mothering is designed like this so that we can understand ourselves and our children. And mothering is an experience of repair and making mistakes and repairing and making mistakes. And that's the only way we're going to learn. So let's not be too hard on ourselves. Let's be more forgiving. And the other part of that, of course, is if we are more forgiving of ourselves, we're more forgiving of our children. And that's the cycle. I believe that as mothers, we all try our best. We all do. But it's like an experience that we're making it up as we go along. That's all of us. We're making it up, and that's fine. And that's how it has to be. So let's lower the bar and be more forgiving.
For any of my listeners and myself who wants to dive deeper into this work, share the title of your book again, where we can get it, where we can connect with you.
Maternal Ambivalence, The Loving Moments and Bitter Truths of Mothering. I love my title. And you can find it on my website. You can order it a hard copy or on an online copy, drmargolowy.com. And it's a book that you can pick up and put down. It's a conversational book, and it's got a lot of stories in it, a lot of anecdotes. It's got film, it's got TV series, Little Fires Everywhere, where I kind of dissect Eleanor, who is the most amazing character. So it's really a companion. And if you want to message me, I'm on Instagram, and even though all those terrible things I said about the internet.
There's
But
good things too. There are good things
we
too.
wouldn't be having this conversation without them.
Right. It's ambivalence.
Ambivalence, it's both. That's right.
Yes, it's both and. Well, thank you so much again for coming on. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I know my listeners will too. I just really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Danielle. It was great.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the A Bridge to Motherhood podcast. I'm so glad you were here today. If you loved this episode, I'd be so grateful if you could leave a review for the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Share it with a friend or snap a screenshot and tag me on social media. If you decide to leave me a review, go to abridgetomotherhood.com/review. That link is also in the show notes so that I can send you a little gift in the mail. Your support helps other moms to find the podcast, and it truly means the world to me. Remember, your motherhood journey deserves your care and attention. Until next time, keep showing up for yourself, mama, and don't worry, I'm here to help every step of the way. See you soon.